Commission for Higher Education, Senior Associate Commissioner and Chief Academic Officer, and Jessica.
I'm Jessica Barrett, and I'm the Director of Academic Affairs and Transfer at the Commission. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to admit people as I'm talking. My portfolio includes all of our transfer initiatives, which inside that portfolio is advanced placement and all of the transfer of credit exams, Cambridge, IB, CLEP, all of those things. So I'm happy that you all could attend today.
And you're going to say anything about recording this?
Correct. You'll notice you just got a message at the top that I just started recording. I had several people tell me that they could not attend today, but would like to see a recording of this webinar. And if there's anybody on your campus that would like to see the recording, just reach out to me after the meeting and I can send that to you. I'm also going to be monitoring the chat during the webinar, so feel free to drop questions in the chat, raise your hand up at the top bar. You can do that if you want to interject a question. We are going to stop after each section on the agenda for questions. So that's just kind of how it's going to flow, but I will be in charge of doing that.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar. I know you have busy schedules, but we really appreciate your participation and engagement in this important topic. As most of you know, by statute and because we're committed to transparency and providing students with the information they need to make informed decisions, we will need to identify, as we have done for other AP courses, how scores on the pre-calculus exam will translate into course credit, such as credit for college algebra, trigonometric functions, or pre-calculus courses offered at your institutions. These equivalencies will be published on the Commission's transfer in website. And in fact, I think, Jessica, you're going to provide a link in the chat to that database.
That in right now.
Very good. Thank you. This webinar is intended to provide an opportunity for you to have your questions about this pre-calculus course answered. And that will follow a brief overview of advanced placement in general, and more specifically, the new AP Calculus course. And with that, we're ready to turn things over to our partners at the College Board. But before I do, I would like to acknowledge and thank the College Board for their long-standing effort to keep state agencies of higher education, like the Commission, fully informed about AP courses and exams. This partnership goes back many years. I think by my reckoning, maybe close to 2 decades, and we're certainly grateful for that. We are truly delighted to have Suzanne McGurk and Jason Van Billiard from the College Board to lead this webinar. Suzanne is Senior Director for AP Higher Education Policy and Community College Engagement. And Jason is Senior Director and Head of the AP Math and Computer Science Department at the College Board, and he has led the work on the pre-calculus course. And with that, I will ask Suzanne and Jason to provide a little more introduction for yourselves. And then with that, you can begin with this important webinar. So Suzanne, you want to start, please?
Ken, thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction, and we really value our partnership and our collaboration. Indiana's always been a great partner to us through your leadership, and we've loved working with Jessica recently as she stepped into this role. I also want to just give a quick shout out to the pre-survey that you did to solicit questions from the participants today. Jason does these kind of presentations all the time. We do these with other subjects, but it's rare, I'm going to say very rare in my experience, to have that kind of pre-survey, and it really helped us build the presentation today and just gave us a information that we needed to make this as valuable as possible to you. I've been with the College Board almost 12 years now. I work, as Ken said, with higher ed policy. I work with all of the states who have common credit policies across their public institutions. And I really value the relationship that we have with Indiana and look forward to this conversation today. And Jason, I'll turn it over to you for introductions.
Thanks, Suzanne. So it's good to meet with you today. And my background really, I was a high school math teacher back in the day, before I went and started teaching undergraduate mathematics. Rose up the ranks, a small liberal arts university in Pennsylvania, where I ended up being the dean of our liberal arts and sciences and ultimately the provost for a number of years. And after that, have come to the College Board to work on all of these AP courses in math and computer science. So like, how do you jump from here to there? The question really is like, how natural was it for me? And that had to do with just being involved with AP as a high school teacher, being involved with AP calculus as a reader for years and years and years before this opportunity came up, and just really excited when the question came, are we going to build an AP pre-calculus course? And it was just a pleasure to jump in that involvement and work with so many very talented people from around the country who worked to construct this course. And we'll get into more details in a minute. I'm going to hopefully share my screen as we go into this presentation. And let's hope I'm on a slightly different setting today than I normally am. So
It looks good.
you can
Yeah,
see
it
the
looks
screen?
great.
Okay,
Yep,
good.
perfect.
That's wonderful because I'm at an office and I'm usually working from my home, and this, like, how does this one gonna work? So it's great to be here. So Suzanne, if you want to just give some introductions about AP first of all, and then I'll get into the course itself.
Sure, and that was one of the survey questions that came in. Someone indicated that they were not that familiar with advanced placement. And it's always a good refresher for us because we assume everybody knows about AP. So advanced placement's been around about 70 years, and it was created as an opportunity for students in high school who wanted to have a more rigorous course curriculum and an opportunity to earn college credit to have that opportunity. We started, of course, very small, and now about 80 to 90% of high schools across the country have some kind of AP program. That might be a single AP class, it might be all of the AP courses that we offer, but we're very proud of the expansion of AP that we've done. We've very intentionally gone into schools where we can reach students who need AP the most. And what do I mean by that? Students who take AP are more likely to go to college. They're more likely to be retained. They're more likely to graduate, and they're more likely to graduate closer to on time than students who don't have AP credits. A very interesting thing about AP to me, instead of just taking this credit and moving on to the rest of their requirements, most AP students tend to end up taking more and more credits where they've had success in AP. And so we do see success in AP leading to majors, minors, double majors, double minors, those kind of engagement that produce credentials and credits in your departments. This is a list of all of the AP courses that we have. Our two newest courses, of course, we're here today to talk about AP Precalculus and AP African American Studies. AP Precalculus will launch this fall and African American Studies next fall. Advanced placement courses are taught in high school by high school teachers, but they are considered college level courses because of the collaboration between high school and college faculty in the development of the content. AP students take an exam every year, once a year. Those tests are going to be starting on May 1st. So we have 2 weeks of AP exam season where all of those exams are spread out over those 2 weeks. So students taking multiple courses don't have multiple exams on the same day if possible. Those exams are scored in something we call an AP reading, where we convene faculty and high school teachers from across the country. About 20,000 people come together to score AP exams in June. What can be scored through multiple choice, which is part of exams, is done through computer, but anything with a free response or something where students have to generate a response other than just selecting an answer is read. And those readings are very intense. We're glad we could talk to you all day about readings, but we're not going to. But we're always looking for readers. So if you're interested in engaging with us and finding out more about AP, we're glad to have you talk to us about being a reader. And I think we can go, yeah. Development committees are very important to the whole process with an AP course and exam design. AP development committees are made up of about half high school AP teachers and about half college faculty. And you can see the list of our pre-calculus committee here. That engagement really helps keep both elements in check and bring the best of the worlds together. There's a chief reader who leads the work and of the reading. So the chief reader leads the work over scoring the exams. And then we have committee co-chairs, and we have those listed here as well. And Jason, I'm going to segue over to you at this point, see if you have other development committee comments that you would share, and then just turn it over to you for the rest of the conversation.
Sure, thank you. So the committee works on developing the end of course exam that we're going to get into details about in just a few minutes. And they also help to guide the framework itself. They are the ones who, as you provide feedback to me and Suzanne about just your reflections on the course, I'll be taking those back to the committee. So I'm very much a conduit between this group, the development committee, and all of our different groups that we're working with. And so I look forward to hearing what you have, your thoughts and what you have to say and the questions you have about the course, because those will come back to the committee. And we do try to get a good distribution of people from different types of schools, different areas of the country, to get a good representation, so that when we ask a question, is this an appropriate question? This is one of the checks in place to make sure it's appropriate for different settings and different groups of students. We'll get in. You saw the scoring, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll get into that in a lot more detail later. I know there were a number of questions about that, so we'll get into those details in a minute. But I just want to give you an overview of the course. I think we should be able to do this in about 25 minutes, a half hour. Is that okay? We'll get really some details about the course. So the course itself, it's been thought about for a long time, and there's a number of factors that we take into account in terms of demand and interest in the course. But it's based on first higher ed research. So we gathered a lot of syllabi. We talked to higher ed faculty from around the country about their course, and we analyzed textbooks and start to build out a framework. So the syllabi from colleges plus faculty input, and then an advisory board and the writing team with experts come together, write the thing. My role in that was very much to, like, when you have a lot of people writing a document, like, they kind of have different voices. My job is to kind of bring the voices together to be a single structure. And from that, an AP framework was developed. We do not, and there's some questions about what does AP provide. We do not provide a textbook. We don't write a curriculum. We provide a course framework with what the teachers are expected to teach and what the students are expected to know and do at the end of the course. And one thing nice about the high school setting for a college course like pre-calculus is, unlike, I taught pre-calculus at a couple different places, at my institution and adjunct at some other places, and you have 45 classroom hours, if you have a 3-credit course, or more if it's a 4 or 5 credit course. But this course is basically 140 school days is what we plan for this content to be delivered. So there's lots of time for students to think, to reflect, to go deep on the topics in their high school setting. It's one of the powers of AP, is the amount of time students have with the course. We also did a pacing and confidence study. So the pacing study had to do with, are these different topics appropriately paced for the right number of days. But the confidence study was really important for us. It's where we asked high school teachers, of these topics, which ones are you most confident teaching? Which ones are you least confident teaching? So we can provide extra professional development opportunities for the teachers for the topics they're least comfortable teaching. Obviously, things like logarithms they're a little less comfortable with. So we can provide extra support in those areas. Where are we in the timeline? And Suzanne talked about the course launching this fall. There is a framework and a course and exam description available online. The course and exam description contains the course framework, which is the learning objectives, all those sorts of things, plus instructional approaches, plus sample multiple choice items are in that course and exam description. And many people asked about that. We'll get into some details about that. There's also a course audit that just opened. if a teacher, high school teacher, wants to offer AP, they have to go through a course audit process showing they're going to help students to learn the materials are delineated in this course, but also they have to submit a syllabus which is reviewed by college faculty to make sure that we want to keep those standards high. And then finally, in the summer, there'll be AP Summer Institutes, which are these opportunities for professional development for teachers to understand what are the expectations of the course. This course launches in fall, very exciting after a number of years of work on it. I cannot wait to see it actually in the classrooms. And then our first exam is an end of course exam, which is given in May. My kids were both born on May 5th and May 10th. They always have AP exams on their birthdays. And they're like, oh, I have AP Spanish on my birthday this year. Happy birthday. And so it's they hate it, but it's your birthday. It's their birthday presents. We have fun with it. That will happen in May of 2024. So we'll need, and I'll repeat this a couple times, we'll need readers, people to score the exams in June of 2024. The AP Precalculus course, the content is broken up into 4 units. You'll see a theme here. Functions. Polynomial and rational functions are Unit 1, exponential and logarithmic functions Unit 2, trigonometric and polar functions in Unit 3, and then functions involving parameters, vectors, and matrices are in Unit 4. It's broken up into more digestible parts for the teachers that we call topics. So 14 topics in Unit 1, 15 topics in Unit 2, and so on down the line. And each of these topics is expected to be 1 to 3 days, depending on the depth of the topic and all the content in it. On the AP exam itself, only units 1 through 3 are on the exam. As we talked to colleges and universities, they said the question became, what do you need in terms of a qualifying score to feel that students are ready for Calculus 1? And the answer has been pretty consistently units 1, 2, 3. So teachers will be assessing everything from all 4 units. Some teachers will include everything from Unit 4, parts of Unit 4, none of Unit 4, but units 1 through 3 are the focus of what the teachers will be pushing. Kevin, you have a question?
Here in Indiana, we're increasingly talking about bifurcating pathways. This is clearly something that's directed at a traditional Calculus 1 engineering science type pathway. Did the College Board imagine a reorganization of these topics and some sort of sub-course that would fulfill the needs of students, say, going into business?
Great question. As we go through the details, I do want to answer that in part because the course, as you'll look at the skills we're going to look at, and you'll look at the amount of modeling that's in the course with data sets, there was a tip toward a broader view of STEM than just the traditional, if you will, up through calculus, be able to do limits, be able to do, your straight to simple analysis sorts of things. And so you'll see sort of a broader look at the field of mathematics. The explicit answer to your question, I'll be forthright with everything. The explicit answer to your question was, we didn't attempt to tear this apart into sort of the pathways that we're looking, that's another option for the future. But for this course, it was prepare for calculus and prepare students for a little broader STEM experience. So it leans toward that direction, but it isn't exclusively in that direction. Good question. So the skills.
I think we have a question from.
Oh, sorry, I
Kevin.
didn't see another hand.
Another question.
I
Nope.
didn't see them.
Okay, just Kevin's, I think, at this point.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, and feel free to jump in. The skills and practices in this course, you can see we have 3 categories of practices, but I want to focus on the 8 skills that are developed. And you can see these skills are not content focused. They actually apply across all different function types. So skill 1A, solving equations and inequalities, you expect that in the very traditional course, along with rewriting expressions, skill 1B. But then skill 1C is constructing new functions, which has to do with, we're going to talk about with and without technology, how do you model different things and construct a function to model whatever the scenario or the data indicate. All of practice 2 is that connection of the multiple representations. Can you identify information from a graph or a table or an analytical representation or a verbal representation? Can you identify information about the function? And then 2B is constructing equivalent functions. Can you take an analytic representation and construct its graph? Can you take a graph and recognize a table that's associated with it, or the verbal representation? So it's that rule of 4 all working together for each of the function types. Practice 3 is the one I think that really spreads out the course in terms of not just holding on those traditional, procedural sorts of things, but to get into more of the conceptual pieces where students are 3A describing characteristics of functions. Where is it increasing? Where is it decreasing? Where is the maximum value? We'll even get into concavity. We'll get into those details in just a minute. 3B is you get it, make an answer, solving equation, but what are you doing about the results? Can we apply that in a mathematical context? Can we apply that in the real world context? What does this answer mean with units? And so taking that answer and doing something with it. And 3C is probably the one that I think we've based upon the feedback we've gotten from teachers, high school teachers, is the one that they're most not most, we go their way. They're least comfortable with, because they keep telling us, 3C is really about supporting conclusions, justification. How do you know this is true? And we've heard some teachers say, oh no, we don't do that till calculus. I'm like, no, we should be doing that from first grade. How do you know this is true? Through elementary school, middle school, high school. And so this idea of really getting students to support conclusions, how do you know something is true based upon what's in front of you, based upon your analysis, is an emphasis of the course. So we do the symbolic manipulation pieces, but it's pushing toward those multiple representations and communication about the mathematics as well. There are 4 course emphases when it's all said and done. The first is functions. When we asked college faculty over and over again, if you could tie the course together, glue it together, what would be the single emphasis that you want to push out from this? And they said a deep understanding of function. And so you can see we developed the idea of function everywhere, all the time throughout the course. The second is modeling. If they can't, and we're going to talk about modeling in 3 different ways, but we want them to be able to model real world situations and put a mathematical model to it. So in this course, a lot of people say, well, what do you mean by modeling? Do you mean the same thing I mean? So I'll tell you what we mean by modeling in this course. The first type of modeling is that very deterministic modeling, right? You have $3, it doubles every day. You can write an exponential function model for what's happening with that growth. The second type is meeting criteria. So for instance, if I asked everyone to write down a polynomial with zeros at 2, 5, and 7, there's multiple correct answers, but there's also wrong answers. So can you meet a set of criteria and create a function model for it? And the third is actually modeling bivariate data sets. So given a set of data in a table, given the scatter plot, they're going to take their technology, they're going to run a regression on that, different regressions we have in the course for each of the function types, and they're going to draw conclusions about those, and I'll get more into those details in a minute. And the fourth one, and this is one that we want to be very explicit about, is the research related to precalculus in preparation for a deeper understanding of later mathematics has centered around, in the past 10 to 15 years, this concept of covariation, how quantities vary with respect to each other. So students should stop thinking about, for instance, a graph as something that's static, as opposed to a graph is showing how X is changing as Y is changing. Throughout the course, we have language about it's not dy dx, calculus takes care of that, right? We're not talking about defining the derivative, but we are going to talk about in a linear function model, in an exponential function model, in a logarithmic. As X is increasing, what's happening to Y? How is Y changing as X is changing in equal increments? And so developing an understanding of how quantities are varying with respect to each other is a key feature of the course. So these are the kind of 4 key features, and you'll see them as we go through the details of the course. The exam itself is a 3-hour long exam. And it covers the content of units 1, 2, and 3. There are 40 multiple choice questions. These are 4 choice multiple choice questions and 6 free response questions. The multiple choice section is broken up into a no calculator permitted part and a graphing calculator required part. So you can see the split here for those 2 parts. And then the free response questions are also broken up into a graphing calculator required, no calculator permitted part. because we're measuring different skills on these different sections. Some skills are things that we want them to be doing without a piece of technology. Others are, have at it, and they're going to be using the technology um, on those sections. Doesn't mean every question requires, like, I'm just going to sit there and punch stuff into my calculator, but it will be there to assist them and to perform different operations for them beyond arithmetic, finding mins, finding maxes, finding zeros, finding points of intersection as they apply the mathematics to a context. On the technologies, just like I said, the expectation is they use that technology as part of their classroom, and their understanding technology should be a tool that helps students to explore ideas, not something that just they run to, to add 2 + 2. We know that happens in our classes. We've seen it. But they should be using the technology to be able to answer deeper questions that we want to ask in the course. So I'll do a really quick walk through the topics. Unit 1, we start with that covariational reasoning piece that, Marilyn Carlson and a group out of ASU have built up, understanding change. It's kind of staging for the rest of the course. We move into rates of change, so linear, quadratic. Rates of change, yes, we know that's concavity. They don't have the second derivative to work with, right? But they're looking at changing rates of change. We have polynomial functions, including non-real zeros. We should know, as I looked at the different crosswalks that we're going to talk about in just a couple minutes, we do not do a full review of Algebra 2 in this course. The assumption is they've had algebra and geometry in Algebra 2. They've studied a lot of the polynomial stuff deeply in Algebra 2. We're going to bring this back as a way to leverage and think about describing polynomial functions, and then you can see polynomial functions in end behavior, rational functions in end behavior, zeros, vertical asymptotes, holes. We don't talk about points of discontinuity because calculus is going to define continuity. And so we get into these details. We do introduce limit notation, but we don't define a limit. That's also for calculus. So limit notation, when we talk about end behavior, we bring in the notation. We have more focus on symbolic manipulation in 1.11. We include polynomial long division. We don't include synthetic division. It's not assessed on our exam. If teachers want to do synthetic division, they're welcome to. This is where we also have binomial theorem and some other methodologies for algebraic manipulation. 1.12 is our transformations. So that's the additive and multiplicative transformations, translations, and dilations. And we do it in general here. It's very much reemphasized. It's reemphasized in Unit 2, but also seriously reemphasized in Unit 3 when we get to sinusoidal functions, right? Because that's a great place where you can deal with amplitude and period and vertical shift and phase shift, those places where the transformations actually pop and you can see them immediately. In 1.13 and 14, we start into this detail of modeling and including piecewise linear functions. But one thing that we have the students doing is when you build a function model, there are assumptions that are related to that function model. And there's also possible restrictions. Are there domain restrictions based upon the context? Are there range restrictions based on the context? If your answer is 2 2/3 people, is that okay? And so we want to have them think about the restrictions related to their model. In Unit 2, we start with sequences, arithmetic and geometric sequences, as a way to tie into linear and exponential functions, an initial value plus something over and over again, or initial value times something over and over again, and build up the concept of how do linear functions change compared to how do exponential functions change. 2.3 and 2.4 is that typical exponential function rules that you would see. Then we do more on modeling. And one thing I want to emphasize here with modeling, this is where we do competing function models and validation. We're not having them look at R or R squared. That's for AP statistics. What we've focused on is just the plots of the residuals. And if the residuals appear without pattern, it could be a good function model. So it's argued from the residual plots. As you suspect, remember we had transformations kind of put into Unit 1. Somewhere you have to put composition and inverse. We put it where we think it goes pretty naturally between exponential and logarithmic functions. And so this is a bridge between exponentials and logs. 2.9 to 2.14 is sort of, it's called all things logarithms. They're modeling with them. They're the rules of logarithms, developing a deep understanding inverse relationship between exponentials and logs. And then 2.15 is a topic that is not as popular in pre-calculus courses, semi-log plots. So when we talk to college faculty, we didn't just talk to math faculty. There were faculty in the biological sciences that said, "Oh man, it would be great if they could see a semi-log plot before they get to my class." And there's lots of people that had wishes. I wish they could do this, and I wish they could do that. But with this one, it's actually provided an opportunity to solidify that understanding or that relationship between exponentials and logs. Because when you have exponential data and you have a vertical logarithmic scale, it becomes linear. And so we saw this as an opportunity to tie together, to really deepen that inverse relationship between exponential and logarithmic functions. Unit 3. We start with a concept of periodic phenomena before we move into defining sine and cosine. Tangents also defined. We base this on the unit circle. Our exam does not have converting between degrees and radians. We have students as native radian thinkers in this course. Teachers should use degrees to help students understand what's going on, but we're going to do the exam in radians and help students develop a deeper, we'll see how far they go, a deeper understanding of radians. And so we stick with that throughout the course. Sinusoidal functions and modeling, and this is where we get into those transformations again, with amplitude, period. Can they take a data set? Can they model, because they estimate where the max and min are, figure out the amplitude and the vertical shift. So from data, from context, this is the Ferris wheel universe, right? So the Ferris wheel problem, which I've asked our item writers to not write every periodic context is a Ferris wheel. There's other kinds of things that can be modeled periodically. And so this is that periodic modeling piece. And then 3.8 through 3.12, lots of trig, tangent, inverse trig, functions, secant, cosecant, cotangent. We do have identities in here, but we did limit the number of identities we're asking students to be familiar with and to assess on. So we have Pythagorean identity and all of its cousins. We have sine of alpha plus beta, cosine of alpha plus beta, and then from those, the natural double angle identities that come from those. We do not have half angle identities. Teachers are welcome to work with those, but these were the most valuable in terms of most future courses, so limited to these. At the end of Unit 3, we do polar functions to a certain extent, and are on the polar plane, function on the polar plane. And this is an opportunity, especially for students who kind of, or for teachers who kind of just want to do units 1 through 3 and don't do any of unit 4. It pulls back together, ties together the trig, ties together complex numbers, but also comes back to that covariational reasoning piece. Up till now, they've thought about how is y changing as x is changing. Now they have to ask questions of how is r changing? How's the radius changing as theta is changing? And suddenly their vertical line test doesn't work. And so this is an opportunity for them to grow in their understanding of function, which does continue in Unit 4 with parametric functions where they have one independent variable, multiple dependent variables. So how is x changing with respect to t? How's y changing with respect to t? We go into implicitly defined functions and conic sections, and our conic section piece is very much to think about how quantities are changing with respect to each other, but also we look at conics from a parametric perspective. We think about on the ellipse written in terms of sine and cosine, and parametrically the hyperbola written in terms of tangent and secant. And so to understand where those asymptotes come from and understand the conics there. We start with vectors in 4.8, 4.9, including law of sines and law of cosines here as a way to work with those non-right triangles. But the purpose of vector really is to get into 4.10 through 4.14, which is matrices. Now, we have a lot of assumptions about students have seen systems of equations many times before this. They started back in 8th and 9th grade with systems of equations. And so matrices are not just a tool to solve systems of equations, but matrices are actually functions. They can act as functions on vectors, mapping one vector to another vector. And so because the course is all about function, we have this theme of matrix times a vector equals a vector. There's a mapping happening here. This is actually function, a linear transformation function that's happening. And quite frankly, a system of equations is just one small case of a matrix multiplied by a variable vector equals another vector, and we're solving for that variable vector. And so to understand things in terms of a function really is the focus of this piece. In terms of the crosswalk, I think Suzanne forwarded a crosswalk that people can look through as you make decisions. You know, where do we sort of explicitly cover things? Where is it strong? Where is it more implicit? Because there's prerequisites, and that's one thing I do want to emphasize. AP Precalculus assumes that students have had an Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2 sequence prior to this. And so Algebra 1, the focus is linear functions with an introduction to quadratics. Geometry is where they've done a lot of the right triangle trigonometry. Algebra 2, they solidify linear, they move into polynomial, they often go into a lot of rational and exponential functions. Sometimes that's in Algebra 1 as well. And so they're coming with a basis, and you can see the way our course is laid out. We're starting from that basis, building up new ideas about covariational reasoning, and then building on top of that as we move into the different function types. So some topics from college algebra and trig, as you look at the crosswalk, are intentionally excluded as they're either highly repetitive from the algebra, geometry, algebra sequence, or we had them applying it through the course as a sub-skill. So for instance, they're solving systems of equations as part of finding a model for different things. And so they're doing it. We're assuming they're doing it coming in as opposed to reteaching it in this course. Some questions that did come through that I did want to quickly address. Will there be algebra and trigonometry subscores? At this point, the answer is no, but it's something that if you say to us, hey, this is really important. If you guys had an algebra subscore and a trigonometry subscore, that would be really valuable. I will continue to communicate that to our development committee. Some people had sample exam questions. Yes, we have. If you search for AP Precalculus online, there's not a lot of stuff besides our stuff, and you'll find our course and exam description has a good collection of multiple choice items. They don't represent an exam, but they are just the multiple choice items. They're kind of give you a flavor for different things. And then there's also a multiple choice exam section that's now posted that you can go through and kind of see it sequenced. Obviously, the first couple items will be really easy, and then it kind of moves into more interesting. I use interesting as a pseudonym for difficult. More interesting items, you know, as they go through the exam. One thing that people asked about, and I do want to address this, is how are the cut scores set? This seemed to be a question that was asked by multiple people. So what happens is going into the first exam, there's no set number like, well, if you get this many right, you're going to get a 2. This many is a 3. This many is a 4. That's not how it works. What happens is we convene a group of faculty together, and they, after the exam, and they put together achievement level descriptors. What does it mean to be a 2? What does it mean to be a 3? What does it mean to be a 4? With the thinking, with the instruction that 3 is like your C student, that 4 is like your B student, and that 5 is like your A student. What does it mean for those students in your classroom? Then those professors will go through the exam, take the exam, and through a process, a standard setting process, decide, you know, of all the points available, how many points would it take to reach our achievement level descriptor for what it means to be a C student? You know, how many of these points for the 4? How many of these points for a 5? And so those are determined by professors saying, you know, my C students can do these, my B students can do these, and so on down the line. And what we've found is through this process, you know, you can look at AP Calculus, AP Statistics, all of our AP STEM exams. You know, it's not really like, well, if you get 60%, it's this. If it's 80%, it's this. It's those cut scores are based upon the exam and the difficulty as set by professors. So we don't come into it with a predetermined, this is the number to get a 3, this is the number to get a 4, this is the number to 5. That's determined by professors taking the exam, working through it item by item, setting, you know, there's processes we use, but basically keep it really simple. Piling up a B student should be able to answer all of these questions. Therefore, the cut score for a 4 is going to be this number, and so that's the process that we go through. What resources are provided? And this AP Precalculus is a full curriculum. It's like I said at the beginning, it's not a full curriculum. Teachers are going to have their own textbooks. They're going to have things that support the students. But what we do provide are a few things for teachers. We provide professional development opportunities. We provide sample exam items for every topic. So students have what are called topic questions and progress checks, so teachers can check on how the kids are doing. We also provide AP daily videos, which are short 6 to 10-minute videos by expert teachers on every single 2 or 3 for every single topic that the student has. So if a student misses class, they can go watch the video. It's not the same as meeting with the teacher for 45 minutes. We know that, but these can help students who get behind, or students who missed class, or students who just didn't get it that day. Or we know how students are, students who are there physically but not there mentally. They have opportunity to understand some of those things, but it's not a full lesson that's taught. It's not, we're not writing a full curriculum. We're not writing a textbook. The teacher's the teacher of the class, and they decide how their students in their context can best understand these things. We just provide opportunities for teachers to learn, but also to supplement what they're doing. I think that's all we have. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we can open it up for Q&A or whatever we want to do next.
Yeah, please do so. This is your opportunity to offer comments, ask questions, etc.
See, Jeff has a question.
Yeah,
Go
I'll just
ahead,
jump
Jeff.
in. Since you mentioned it already, I do think that the sub scores were a good idea. Oh, by the way, I did go to your breakout in October.
Oh, wonderful.
Ohio. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that was a good breakdown of getting our hands dirty with what was in the curriculum.
Wonderful.
So I was impressed. I'm happy with the rigor of the types of things I saw, that for a student coming to my institution, if they were to get a 4 or a 5, that would certainly be our pre-calculus course. But where I was going with this was, I know we talked about it at that meeting in October, are those sub scores. And what I see in Indiana, and I'm heavy looking at high school transcripts. I look at thousands of them all the time as they come to the institution. And there is a big pattern here in Indiana, I don't know if it's national, of students taking that 3rd year algebra trig type course, whatever it's called, and stopping after just the algebra part.
Yes.
And then they go to either AP Stat or a finite course or a QR course or something else. They don't do the trig part. So having those sub scores would be helpful, because there's several of our majors that just need one more course, and college algebra will get them the college credit they need for whatever major that is. They're a STEM major, they need the trig part. So this will help us try to put them somewhere, right?
Right.
And so when I was trying to find, how we will handle it at my institution, if they got a 4 or a 5, they would get a 5 credit hour pre-calculus credit. Okay. But if they got a 3, and let's say there'll be a liberal arts major, a fine arts major, whatever, they just need one math course above 2 years of algebra and geometry. So we give them undistributed gen ed credit for mathematics, because we're not sure where they're, should it be college algebra, should be trig, should be what, right? But if they're going to become a STEM major, then I'm running into a placement problem. Do they get the 3 because of the trig part or the algebra? Where do I start them? What extra courses? So that's still kind of a murky area, and I think all of us are kind of struggling with that, especially if we have technology and engineering programs on our campus. So I know this is a long-winded discussion, but I wanted to see our perspective, and I think it's going back to the high schools. They're just not doing the full-blown course, and hopefully maybe this will get them to do the trig part also. Maybe not, but all right, so I'll stop there.
Now that's really helpful to hear.
Great. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Petrosin.
Yes. So, I mean, your answer about the grade cutoffs, to be honest, didn't tell us anything. I mean, at least to me, except saying, trust us. I mean, I would give, so if a student in my class asked me a question like that, I would determine, the grade cutoffs. my answer probably would be similar, like to yours, but in a small class. In a large class, though, so we need more precise, answers. So you cannot. I mean, it has to be based on something. It's not just subjective, judgment of just a few readers.
Maybe I didn't explain enough. Maybe I did. I don't know. But it's a large collection of college faculty who set those sub scores. It's not, not something that me or the chief reader does, so to speak. It's a collection of faculty who review the thing and set those scores. That makes sense.
But how exactly set? I'm sorry, I really don't know how this works. But again, that doesn't tell me anything. So what's your target? So for instance, what's the average target score? Is there a target score like that, or what's?
So I don't know if you're asking about general process. Like if you were to Google standard setting processes for validating exams, there's about half a dozen different types of standard setting processes that are used in psychometric circles for setting that cut score. So we use usually two of those processes, so we can make sure we triangulate on that. But there's not it's a criterion reference. It's not norm reference. So as many students meet the criteria of what professors say, this is what B work is, or this is what C work is, those students get the qualifying score. And if most students don't meet that level, that achievement level, then most students will not get into a qualifying score. So what we don't want to do is say, well, we have to make sure that 60% of the students get a qualifying score of 3 or above. Well, if students haven't met the standard that college professors have set, they shouldn't get that score, if that makes sense.
So it's not based on a cumulative score, so it's based on how they do on individual problems?
No, it's a cumulative. It's based upon the cumulative score, so all the points together, and it's professors setting a cut score based upon that cumulative number.
Well, okay. So yeah, it doesn't tell me much again, but maybe that's me. Thank you.
Yeah, if this helps, I'll jump in. At that conference, we spent several hours looking at different sets of problems on your mock-up tests or sample tests that you had. And we had to do them ourselves and actually work them. And then you kind of had rubrics, and we had to write, on there what we expect a student at each one of these levels to be able to do. And I don't know how many people were there, 1,000 faculty at that conference. It was a huge ballroom, hundreds of math professors.
Yeah, hundreds. Mm-hmm.
From all types of institutions, community colleges, liberal arts colleges, engineering colleges, etc. And so just my view that was a pretty good rubric of trying to figure out what do we expect an A student to be able to do and how many points they should be able to get on each one of these problems, a B student. And I know how it's being described as you're just adding up the points and that's where the cut score is. But it was kind of a holistic view at the end, and then you stand back and look at that rubric and say, we expect a 3. How much of this question should be right for a C student? So if that helps. So, I'm just coming in from that one conference I attended. So.
Any other questions or comments? Want to make sure we're providing enough time here, because this is a great opportunity to ask questions.
So I was interested in a conversation that one of the speakers talked about at that conference, and it's kind of going back to who would use this course or why take this course. And I think it's obvious to many of us, if you're going down a STEM path, you would do this. But there was some conversation, and I've slept a long time since then, about what other types of students besides STEM students are you trying to target for this type of a course? And I thought I heard you say not necessarily intending to go on to calculus, but just a better feel for what mathematics is used as a modeling process and being able to describe your results and different ways of knowing and understanding math. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So in terms of the target audience, there's multiple audiences in some sense. We know that the kids who are on their way to, AP calculus and going up that engineering path, this is kind of a stepping stone along the way, but that's really not the group we're trying to pull in with this course. We know they're gonna take calculus, they're gonna be pushing through on the way. But there's also students who have had, for instance, 3 years of high school mathematics. Maybe they skipped math their senior year, then they're coming to our colleges and they haven't had math for 14, 16 months and they don't remember a thing. And we do want to entice students to consider taking a 4th year of math. They may earn credit for it, they may not earn credit for it, but entice them to take the 4th year. Students who we really hope to get more students, to consider STEM and STEM adjacent fields because of something like this. So taking that gap, taking that year without the mathematics versus continuing through and understanding, and being successful in mathematics again, maybe they will consider those careers. Others, it's thinking about, that the mathematics is beyond just solving equations, but that we're actually doing modeling, that this type of modeling applies across many different disciplines, the natural sciences, the social sciences, to try to build those understandings for students who may not be going down the strict engineering path. And so I know you can't build something for all students. That's not what we were trying, like in terms of like you're going to satisfy every need of every student. That's not going to happen. But we wanted to make sure that we had what students need who are moving on to calculus, but something broader than that, so they can understand the bigger picture, the bigger world of mathematics and how it fits into real world context and how function models can be used to describe so many things to predict, extrapolate, interpolate, to really engage their world through this mathematics.
Jason, can I jump in here as a
Mhm.
non-math person? And I know
Sure.
that leaves me in the very small minority on this call, but I like to think of this course, and I'm becoming more of a math person the longer I'm around you, Jason, but not a true math person. I like to think of this course as that last chance opportunity for STEM for a student like me who might have been like, oh, maybe there's a chance I could get some college credit and maybe I won't have to take math again. So let me take this course. And then maybe this course turns the tide for me. And I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now math is a language I understand. So I like to think of that very small slice of people who might have an opportunity to pursue further math because of this course.
So, Jason, let me jump in with a question,
Sure.
kind of building on your notion of an expanded audience that this course might target. You mentioned the student who would have had 3 years of high school math, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2 kind of sequence. I wonder, what kind of expectations would you have with respect to how well a student might have performed in those 3 courses? Let's set aside for a second, different grading schemes at,
Yep.
rubrics at different high schools and so on. But sort of as to the extent you can generalize, would someone, I would assume, clearly somebody who got A's in those 3 classes would be well prepared for this. What about the student who might have gotten B's or even C's? Would you recommend this course for them, or would there be other criteria that you would apply with respect to I'm trying to put myself in the sort of high school advisor function. How do you advise students whether this is a course they should consider.
I think it's a fabulous question. I mean, one thing that we do want to do is provide opportunities for students. First of all, students who are willing, right? So do you want to continue to pursue mathematics? Do you want to pursue this course? That's the first factor, right? And then able is always the big question. Yeah, I mean, like, are you able to tackle this course? So what we did is, if you look in the course and exam description, we listed a set of prerequisites, and the prerequisites are not in terms of courses or grades. They're listed in terms of what you need to be proficient with and what you need to be familiar with. And so looking at that as a counselor and working with students, like, are you proficient in these things? Do you feel very comfortable doing these things? If so, you know, this course is going to stretch you in new ways. If you're just barely proficient, you know you can do it. This course is going to be a challenge. Maybe you'll get a 2 or a 3 on the exam. I don't know, but for you, it's going to stretch you a little bit more. And so, listing it in terms of content that a student needs to be familiar with and comfortable with to be able to be successful in this course was kind of the approach we took. And so, proficiency um, is proficiency in skills and concepts related to linear and quadratic functions, including manipulation, solving equations, solving inequalities. So if they're not good with linear functions coming into this course, that it's going to be a very serious uphill battle. They might want to consider a different path, but they've had a number of years of linear functions. They've had so if they, those kids, like, grades don't always reflect how much they know. Sometimes they just didn't do the work. You know what I mean? So to ask those kinds of questions. Are they proficient with algebraic relations related to polynomial functions? Can they factor trinomials? Like, can you do these things? If you can't, this is going to be, you're going to have to really understand those things more deeply before you're successful in this course. Is just assume that you know how to do these things. Some right triangle trigonometry. Can you solve right triangles using trig, or can't you? You should have had that in geometry. If you can, then we're going to move on to the trig functions. It's going to be a little, it's going to be an expansion of that. We expect that you can solve systems of linear equations in 2 or 3 variables coming into this course. If you're not proficient in that, that might be something that you want to study over the summer before you come into this course. Then there's other things that we call familiarity. Have you seen a piecewise defined function? I hope you're at least familiar with it, because we're going to use them, but we're going to build on some of those ideas. Have you seen exponential functions? Or this is going to be your first look at exponentials. This might be a jump for you if you've never even seen exponential functions. How are you familiar with radicals? Have you seen square roots and cube roots before you came into this course? If not, it's going to be a real challenge. So we put it in terms of what you need to be proficient in and what you should be familiar with coming into the course if you want to be successful. And so that's where a student kind of gauge, as if I were a high school counselor with a student, let's kind of gauge like these things. Oh yeah, I'm good with this. All right, then do you want to challenge yourself with this course? Yes, I do. Then let's put you into this course. If they're like, what I don't know what you're talking about, I'm sorry, then I might say, maybe you want to consider something different if you don't even know what I'm talking about over here.
Well, in part, I asked the question because I think at the state level, we probably could do a better job in trying to provide guidance to students as well as parents and others as to what kind of courses they should consider taking. And now there's only so much you can do at the state level, so I'm not at all deluding myself that we can provide a definitive set of criteria or guidance that would sort of solve the problem, if you will.
Mhm.
But I think we can do a better job, and I think I guess perhaps I would challenge all of us and maybe even ask the question, if we were able to put together some guidance, would that be something that you and your committee, for example, might want to look at, so that again, recognizing we can't provide too much detail, but I think we if we did provide more guidance at the state level than we currently do, which is not a whole lot, maybe this would at least provide some assistance in having students make more informed decisions, which is very much what we want them to do. And maybe that would help. But I think if we did go this route, we would certainly appreciate any comments that you might have, should we be able to put some material together, and we again appreciate your feedback if we go that route.
I would hope that as we think about providing opportunities for students, that the AP in front of a course can be an intimidating thing for a student, especially if it's their first AP course. We've seen like when it's your first, especially a first AP STEM course is like, oh no, can I do this? And so like putting it out there that in terms of like, are you willing to work in this course? And have you been, we're not talking about, we know the students top of the class, straight A's in Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, but that you don't have to be that. Have you been working in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 to understand what's happening? Have you been decently successful? We should give this course a chance, for a student, because this might be where it finally clicks. And I mean, we all know this with especially with Algebra 2, kids who kind of went through and kind of memorized procedures. By the time when you get into Algebra 2, it's like there's almost too many procedures that my memory tricks don't work anymore, and you actually have to understand what's going on. And so this is another opportunity for them to develop a deep understanding. So if you've had some level of success in these areas, provide an opportunity, provide a door for students to, who knows what they can do.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad we recorded this because I think, at least from my perspective, you provided a great answer to my question, but something I'd certainly like to go over more and see what we might be able to extract. And obviously, our math panel will be right in the middle of all of this, but I think you did provide some good guidelines there, and we may want to linger over those some more and see what we can extract. Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, we haven't taken all the time that we had allocated for the webinar, and that's okay. I'm going to take that as a sign that Suzanne and Jason did a terrific job in talking about AP in general and the pre-calculus course in particular. No one has asked this question, but I mentioned at the outset that one of the things we need to do, as we have done for other AP courses, is to identify at each institution, what a course and what credit a 4 or a 5 would translate into. We have just for those on the call, we have a STAC meeting next week. That's a statewide transfer and articulation committee meeting. So one of the questions that we plan to put to STAC, and I'd like all of you to think about, is what's the timeline for establishing those score course credit equivalencies, and I'm not, I can think of different timelines, but that's something I think we all need to think about. And of course, I'm always more inclined to do something sooner rather than later, so that we can then begin to incorporate that into the database that we have that Jessica mentioned and provided the link to in the chat. We need to update that for pre-calculus, but obviously we'll be looking to the math panel for guidance there, as well as the statewide transfer and articulation committee. But we need to begin to think about timelines and processes for adding the pre-calculus scores and course equivalencies to the transfer in database that we maintain at the commission.
Can that I'd like to just to add that I know that schools and districts and students particularly are also, they have a keen eye towards what will I get if I take this course. So now is a really important time for them to solidify if they've already enrolled and stick with it, or if they're trying to get into a seat in the class right now. Thank you.
Right, for sure, and that's kind of my reference to, I would prefer to do sooner, things sooner than, rather than later if we can. So it would be terrific if as students are thinking about what math classes to take in their senior year, we could have this information available, as well as perhaps some guidance to help make those informed decisions. Any other closing comments? Okay, I think
Could I just give one final advertisement?
Sure.
I'd love to have some of you be AP readers. It's a pretty simple process. Google become an AP reader if you want to be part of that. Also, we will need people for the standard setting after the exam. And so if you're interested in being part of the standard setting panel to set the scores for AP Precalculus, I very much welcome you to email myself and or Suzanne, and we'll get your name added to a potential pool of people. But again, if you want to spend a wonderful week in Kansas City, Missouri, eating barbecue and scoring AP exams, love to have you on board. Thanks a lot.
Oh, and by the way, that reminds me, your contact information was in the slide deck. I presume the slide deck is something you can share with us and we can use. Terrific. Right.
And yeah, if Suzanne wants to just email that slide deck to me, I can get it out to the webinar participants. That'd be great.
Very good. Thank you, Jessica. And with that, I think we're ready to give about 23 minutes, appropriate for a math panel here, to be very precise. So we're going to give those minutes back to you. But thank you, Suzanne and Jason, for your time. And thank all of you who were on this webinar for contributing your time and engagement to this. We really appreciate that. So once again, thanks very much, and have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for including us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.